Happy Tuesday, all things Montessori community. Hope everybody's having a great week so far. Jamie and I sat down this week and we talked all about the prepared environment, one of the most essential pieces of the Montessori elementary experience. We talked through all the details about it, why it's so important, why teachers spend weeks and months and even throughout the year making sure the environment is absolutely it might not be perfect, but we try to make it pretty darn close to being perfect. So we talk all about that. We also touch on how to make sure your child has what they need during quarantine and how to create a Montessori environment at home. Now, it's not going to have all the Montessori materials, but we just talk through the most important aspects, and it's really doable in the home. Anyway, it's super fun. As always, we are so thankful for everybody. I can't believe we're into September already. Crazy. We hope everybody's doing okay. I have exciting news. I got some All Things Montessori merchandise in the mail this week that I will be sending to our amazing patrons. So if you're a patron of us, thank you. And watch out for a letter from Jamie and I. It's coming soon. If you want to become a patron, just like these amazing people, it's going to be linked at the bottom of this episode. And thank you so much for your support. And also follow us on Instagram and email us. That's the most important thing. Email us if you have any questions. We would love to hear from you, especially in this time of uncertainty. We'd love to know what's working, what's not working, if you have any questions. Anyway, we're always here for you. And we hope you enjoyed this pretty great episode.
Well, hey, Jamie, how are you?
Doing pretty well. How's it going for you, Rachel?
It's going great. I was just sharing with you the funny teaching thing I had today. I did illuminated letters, and there's nothing better than when elementary children are laughing uncontrollably. It was so fun. So my day ended really, really nicely with a fun art lesson. So I'm good. How are you?
Doing well. Excited about our topic today that we get to talk about.
I know.
A huge important part of our work.
It is so important. And it's, this, when I remember learning about it in training, I remember feeling like, excited to get into the thick of, the topic we're going to talk about. But I remember kind of being surprised at how much time it actually took to put it all together,
Yeah. And this is the prepared environment, this idea in Montessori that children are building themselves, and therefore what we try to provide is a really carefully designed place for them to do that so that they can take from the environment what they need.
Yeah. And I think, one doesn't exist without the other in a way, you know what I mean? Like the prepared environment and Montessori, how it is conducted by the prepared adult, kind of work together to make it all happen. It's not like you can have a prepared environment that's perfect and just like throw a child into it. Like, no, they're not going to know what to do. Right. But it's a really big piece of the puzzle.
Right. Yep. And knowing that children, the learning is happening inside of them, and knowing that they have particular sort of developmental characteristics that are prevalent depending on where they are in their development. We work to provide an environment that will allow them to help teach themselves, like we know they can do and they will do. But also is really responsive to the characteristics that are, firing at that time, so that it that's part of the reason we call it prepared. It's just that it's been thoughtful. We're doing it intentionally, right. Thinking about responding to their developmental characteristics.
Right. So let's talk about like the components of the prepared environment. Because I think there are the obvious ones, and then I think there are the not so obvious ones that can be overlooked. But that's just in my experience. So we have, just to start it off, you have to put all the Montessori material somewhere, right? And you have to do it in a way that makes sense. Wouldn't you say? I remember setting up sections and thinking through and actually pretending I was a child getting work out and, and just making sure it all organically made sense. I think you want to take away those the unnecessary obstacles, or wait, oh, this wasn't as easy as I thought to get this, or oh, this is up too high, or oh, that material that would be weird if it was right next to that one, or
Yeah, so I think a huge part of like what we do especially, at the beginning of the school year when we're in person
right.
is we think about, our classrooms, and we spend a lot of time physically arranging the classroom. And I know that's something I rearranged every year, at least once a year, to just tweak things or try something new or add something exciting to the environment. So so figuring out how to arrange it is important. And at the elementary level, there's not a strict order to put the materials on the shelf. So generally, like you're saying, you're going to think logically what makes sense for the children, generally group them according to their academic subject area, and have some logical placement of things based on that. But the elementary doesn't have a strict order. Now, the primary environment is set up in a far more linear, by the subject area, and then the order sort of the materials on the shelf is pretty clear. And that's one kind of difference in the elementary, but definitely considering what's gonna make sense, and also what's gonna be attractive.
Right. I was just thinking that. That is such a big part of it. The environment, quite frankly, is supposed to be beautiful. It's supposed to be enticing. It's supposed to be relatively clean, and it's supposed to call to the child in a way that's like, oh my gosh, I want to work with that so badly because it's just beautiful,
Yeah, beauty's a real important sort of aspect of what we think about with the prepared environment for Montessori children, that we want it to be attractive. We want everything on the shelves to be as beautiful as they can be. And we're going to apply an aesthetic more like you would decorate your home, not like I'm preparing this for children, so it has to be sort of kitschy,
right.
Get stuff from the, I don't know, strange decorations that our culture makes for children. In fact, we can apply sort of our general aesthetic we would use in our own homes for our classrooms, carefully chosen artwork and artifacts and plants and other things that really beautify the classroom.
Yeah, I mean, putting your own personal touch is really crucial because it can be really subtle, but it does create that like home-like environment that will soon become, the children's second home anyway. So you want it to feel comfortable and nice and a pleasant place to be. And I have to be honest, after I took Montessori training and then I was in the classroom, it really changed the way I saw the world and my spaces around me. And it kind of changed how I set up my own home. In a way, I really have just become way more thoughtful about where things go and how things are placed. It makes a really, really, really big difference.
It does. It does to just the general sort of atmosphere of any space. And then in the classroom, in particular, when you have 25 to 30 humans working in there together,
right.
Knowing that everything has a clear place, that it's carefully maintained, and all of that is just, it makes it much easier to work together.
It sure does,
because you're not tracking things down all the time and all of that. That's why in a Montessori environment, all things are also on open shelves, so that the children can get them themselves. And that's not how Montessori started in her work with children.
Right.
She had things put away in cupboards like we often do with children, but she actually found that they could get things themselves, and so that we do have everything out on open shelves, attractively displayed, beautiful containers, trying as much as possible to eliminate plastic or non-natural materials, wood, clay, metal containers, other things like that that are natural and beautiful.
Yeah. And just a note here, Goodwill, TJ Maxx, there are just so many little containers out there in the world that are not very expensive. And they're still going to be beautiful too. Like I found some of the most gorgeous things at a thrift store or a yard sale, or, it doesn't, I mean, it's just always kind of be looking for like those little containers, or I would always use napkin holders or napkin rings or things like that to hold cards or certain things. Because again, when you're straying away from plastic and, fake looking materials, or just, not well kept materials, makes a really big difference. Because when you choose these things and you take the time and you look for those beautiful things, and I wanted to say thrift stores because it doesn't need to break the bank, it just needs to look natural and beautiful. And what I'm trying to say is there's a level of respect that's then conveyed to the child, that they're going to treat that material with care more so because it's beautiful. That's the reason why we have glass in the environment, because it's like a level of trust, like, yeah, you're old enough to use that or to carry that glass tray, of course, and yeah, it might break, but that's part of the experience, is using those real things.
Yeah, they get real clear feedback,
right,
of how they need to, moderate their movement or whatever when they experience that something breaks.
Right.
And yeah, going to thrift stores and other places is a great way to find unique little containers, and 50 cents here, $1.50 there.
Yeah.
You can find a variety of things. So getting into that habit of, constantly being on the lookout for those kinds of objects that you can have to beautify your classroom is just an important part of being a Montessori practitioner. Stopping by another thrift store, or, let's pull over to that yard sale real quick. That's just part of it. And also because things will break, especially in classrooms where children haven't been given that responsibility as much. And so if it's a child that's used to only using plastic plates and plastic cups, what they've been taught through that is that when you drop something, it doesn't break. Right. So that, like they've had that repeated experience. So when they first experience something that is breakable, chances are they're going to break something.
Sure.
Because they haven't had the practice of moving and acting in a way that's going to keep something breakable from breaking.
Right.
So you just have to be prepared. Those things will happen. You show them how to clean it up, and you always have an extra little container or something around to replace, because you don't want children thinking. There's a balance between helping them learn to be really respectful of the environment and take care of it, but you also don't want them ever to feel that the things in your environment are more important than they are as individuals, or more important than your relationship to them is.
Right.
So it's always a balance of helping them take care of the environment, to be respectful of the things within it, but also that, they can break things on occasion. That happens. I mean, I break things as an adult.
Right. It's right. Exactly. It happens. It's a part of life. Right. And then what do we do when we break something? We clean it up. Right. It's not like there's nothing and that happens afterwards. You clean it up, you work together.
Well, and honestly, sometimes I cry. Honestly, the other thing that happens is I cry when I break something. I broke my favorite platter a couple of months ago, and I was so sad. and so that's the other thing too. The children may have an emotional response, right?
Yeah.
And you might feel a little sad too, and you can just acknowledge and say, yeah, it's really sad. Let's clean it up. We'll find something else we can use for this, or so we want to just treat them like we would any adult who has that experience. But But that's why thrift stores are great, because you
yeah.
can find a variety of things that you're not like, it's not your, your grandmother's china or
I was just
something.
going to say, I would
advise.
I would refrain from putting something you care a lot about that's very breakable in the classroom, because chances are it might break. I just think it's better if, there are lots of beautiful things that you can find, then maybe keep the family heirlooms at your house.
Yes.
But it's cool because, when something breaks in the classroom, and then when you have to clean it up, Montessori children amaze me. Everybody's helping. I've seen it multiple times.
Yes.
And it's like a instinct. It's like, of course I'm going to help. It's, it's not, I don't know, it's not even a question. It's really lovely. It's really great. I've seen that on more than one occasion. It's pretty awesome.
And that brings up, that's part of the psychological environment that we prepare. So there's this physical environment that we really, we can see, and we're all struck by the different classrooms. We like to visit each other's classrooms and see how things are set up, or the different containers you use, or all of those things. And that is a huge part of a Montessori environment. But there's also this whole intangible psychological environment of, this is a place where we can make mistakes, and it's safe to do that. It's, you can take risks and fail, and that's okay.
Right.
You know that you're loved and valued. You know that you're going to be treated with respect, and you're going to treat others with respect. That this is a place we work. All of that is some of the psychological environment that we also have to prepare as well.
Sure. And that's what you cultivate throughout the whole year. And you really harp on that in the beginning. Because as we've said before, it's really hard to backtrack if we don't set kind of the culture of work and those sort of expectations up front. It's hard to make up for that. And also, just to add though, it's a place to make mistakes. It's a place, as you were saying, but it's also it's a safe place, and it's a place to have fun and to be yourself too.
Yes.
And that's just lovely. It's great when the children, I think all of my students that I've ever had, always when we'd go on break, or even sometimes the weekends, they would be disappointed that they couldn't come to school on Saturday. And I would say, well, I'm not going to be here, but you can try to get in the door. But
I need a break.
I will not be attending school. No, but that says to me though that they did find home and safety and security in the environment, and that's another really, really important piece of it.
Yep.
So I want to talk about the one that the part of the prepared environment that always gave me trouble. It's sort of silly. I always struggled with the supply shelf because I think it's really important, obviously, and it's also the most it's going to get the messiest the most in my experience, because people are constantly using it. But I think the supply shelf, that should be a place where a child can go, and either if there's something not there, they can let somebody know, or if they go, then they should be able to get what they need at the supply shelf. But it always gave me trouble. And it was one of those things I kind of discounted. My first year, I did not have all the supplies I needed. And I just kind of felt like I was constantly playing catch up with that silly supply shelf. It's so random, but it was just like my kryptonite. I don't know. I just couldn't ever get it right,
Yeah, well, and I think it's a good one to think about now when we're helping a lot of families at home have environments for distance learning, because of course, at home you can't have it's impractical or impossible to have an entire, classroom with all the Montessori materials. Right. But even in a classroom with all the Montessori materials, we have some other, resources that are the kinds of things you can have at home, and supply shelves are some of that. And I think you can think about supply shelves in a couple of ways. There's the general everyday supplies the children, like consumables or other things they just generally need, like different types of paper, construction paper, booklet paper, hole punches, staplers, erasers, pencils, color pen, like all of
Right,
what else
right.
is on that supply shelf? Like,
I mean, well, you should have an art supply shelf too. Like it's like art supplies and then regular, like,
right.
everyday. I guess like
Kinda
any kind of
office.
math paper.
Yeah. And the math paper could be on a supply shelf or it could be on the
Right.
math shelf. I've done
Right.
both. Also a science supply shelf. So like
Mhm.
where you've got all your consumables and your materials for science, experiments and demonstrations. And
Right.
but to have these sorts of places where it's consumables, or it's those office things you just always need. Like I need to have the tape dispenser or the whatever,
Right.
those
Yep.
different things. And that's something that's really important in the classroom. And then also can be really important at home for independent work so that the children can do projects when they're ready because they know they've got the supplies available. They don't have to. We just don't want the adult to become the bottleneck to their activity. And that's where the supply shelves can allow them that independence to, any kinds of activities without having to get an adult to get something for them.
Well, there's also nothing worse than, and this has happened to me, where a child is like really excited about doing something and then they go to the supply shelf and like they're out of it, or they don't have it, or they can't figure it out, or and then it's just like it's like stunting that it's like stifling that flame that was just there. I'm
right.
like, oh no. And it's the worst. So you just want the experience to be organic, and that when they have that idea, when they get that really awesome thought about, oh, I wonder if I could do that, it just needs to be able to be followed through. That's what the supply shelf basically is. It's just it's the catalyst for their great big work they're going to do,
Yeah. So it's all those materials they may need, like papers and whatever else, or maybe it's stuff to help them organize, and it's the paper clips and staplers that helps them get their things put together. And I generally had one shelf for general supplies, office supplies. I kept the toolbox on that shelf too. And then I had several kind of art supply shelves, and then and then some science supplies as well. And it's okay to have limited amounts out of some of these things on a given day, so that you can kind of moderate how much is being consumed in a day, or you have a better eye on it, you or your assistant. And it's okay to have some supplies that are not out all the time. In certain classes, I have not had calligraphy ink out available to be used at any time because it was, I had a young class that couldn't handle the responsibility of that ink, so and I wanted, they could with some supervision, and but I didn't necessarily want them to have it when I didn't know they had it. So
of course
you can make some of those decisions depending on your group, but as much as possible.
My version of that was watercolor paper, because we just were doing very quick watercolor paintings, and the watercolor paper is not cheap, so I was just like, okay, we're just gonna put a few out at a time, and that's fine. And that's part of the role of the adult. That's answering the needs of your community and helping it run smoothly, and also just providing some limits.
The other thing I did with watercolor paper is cut it into really small pieces, so that when they were just doing like those little, I'd do a little 3x5. Well, take out that 3x5 card and you can practice your strokes, or you could practice making something, so that they could. Because of course we want them to have it, because it's such a different experience using watercolor paper versus just regular paper. It's
definitely.
So it's a constant balance like that, and that's what we have to use our judgment on all the time, which is why in the classroom, as guides in the classroom, the trained guides have to be really intimately connected to their prepared environment, constantly kind of walking through it on a daily or several times a week basis to see what's what's needed, what's broken, what's missing. You can't relegate all of that to an assistant. An assistant can help with
Right.
that, sure,
Right.
but the assistant isn't trained and doesn't have the knowledge in quite the same way. So it's still really important for guides to really check their environments, ideally on a daily basis, before the day
Oh, yeah.
starts or at the end of the day when the children are gone.
Right. Or maybe you'll see, this has happened to me. I've seen like a shelf or something that hasn't been used in a while. And then I'm like, okay, well, why? Is it because I haven't, given a lesson on that in a while? Is it dirty? Is it not easy to use? Does it not make sense? Like, there are definitely tweaks and things you can make. I mean, I don't recommend just reorganizing your classroom like all the time, because the children are going to be really thrown off by that, because they get really into their classroom. I mean, I think if something's not working, definitely, mix it around. But I mean, this might have been a little bit too much, but if I needed to fix something or move something, I'd usually just sort of give the kids a heads up. And now it wasn't a big deal. It was like I would move a shelf, somewhere else or something. But I just, I made the mistake of really reorganizing one day, and then the children came in the next day, and they were young, so I think just the sense of order was still kind of prevalent with them, and they just completely freaked out. They're like, "Wait, what happened?"
No, I mean, it's a really good point, because not only, even with the older ones, my philosophy on that is that this is not my classroom. So once,
Right,
like,
exactly.
I prepare it before school starts, but once school starts, it's our classroom. And so if I notice something or I want to make a change, I'm always going to give them a heads up, or even ask their sort of thoughts on it, depending on the group. Yep, because it just shows them that this isn't, it's in the same way that I didn't have like a teacher's desk and a teacher's chair and all of these other things, like I was special and, better than the rest of them in the environment. I always, I had a spot to park my stuff, but I didn't have a desk and a place that I sat. Because that's not how anyone else works in the environment. So why should I be different? And so I was always, and I never had a lesson table either for that reason. I always gave lessons throughout the classroom. I understand right now in COVID, some people are making that shift because we have to be so careful. So if you're doing that, don't panic. I'm not, but
it's fine.
But in general, when we're in a normal sort of environment, I like to show the children that all parts of the classroom are a place where I work, just like all parts of the classroom are where you work. So I gave lessons on the floor and on the table and in this corner and at that table and all over the place.
And I did the same thing. I mean, I was trained by you, so I learned that from you. I remember you talking about that. And I remember trying out a few things, like maybe one day I was feeling like a little bit lazy or something. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to give lessons at this table. It is so boring. It's not as fun. I felt like it wasn't the same experience. So I completely just threw that out the window, because when you're giving lessons outside on the floor, at a table, at a chowkey, like whatever you're doing, it really adds to the experience. And again, yes, you're the guide. Of course you are, we obviously, like, you are in charge, because it is, you are implementing, you are showing, you're the Montessori guide, you're doing the education piece. But when you get down to their level like that sense of respect, that trust, not only is it gonna, the children are going to, listen to you a little bit more and just be more into the lesson, but it also it shows them that, like, yeah, we're all here to learn together. Like, I'm not just here to just talk to you. Like, we're here to learn together and do all this stuff together. It's more collaborative.
Yeah.
I find that Montessori children love working on the floor. Love it. And so I was just going to say, when you're preparing your environment, make sure you have space for, maybe a group song or something, or a group meeting, but also plenty of space for the kids to work on the floor. Because they love it, in my experience. I mean, my kids did. But
yeah, you want to try to make sure you've got floor space for any number of things, especially like timelines or checkerboard. Yeah. There's a variety of things that work well on the floor. And I never had a very large classroom. I had 3 different classrooms, well, 2, I guess, and each of them was under 1,000 square feet. And we had to have all their like cubbies and coats and shoes and everything like that in the classroom too, so that I didn't have a hallway. I walk through some schools with hallways and just in awe of what that's like to have that space. But because I never did, I'm like so envious. And so we didn't have a constant open space for even, the whole class to sit together or sing a song or anything. So when we had to be very intentional when we were going to have the whole class get together, which, by the way, does not have to happen every day that the whole class sits down together. This is something I see, and I don't know why people do it, because there's really no reason that every day you would need to get together as a group. But when we did get together as a group, we'd move tables. We'd move tables out of the way and make space so that, because otherwise when we'd sing at times, we didn't have to sit in a circle. We'd kind of group together however we could, but if we needed to sit in like a circle and be together as a group, then, and even sometimes for read aloud when they would, sprawl all over the floor, we'd have to move tables to make the space for that.
Yeah. Every classroom, I don't know, in my experience, no classroom is going to have exactly everything that you want. There's always going to be a few things that you really have to just sort of work around. And it's doable. I always, what I envisioned for my elementary classroom is that there would be a door to go right outside. I taught in this classroom where that was the case. And I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. This is one of the things I must have. I never had it. And it was fine.
Yeah.
It was not a big deal. We totally made it work, and we did have a nice outdoor space. It just took a little bit longer for us to get there. So
And I had a door to the outside, but the outside was like a little sidewalk, and then it was our parking lot. And so, so it wasn't
right.
And we didn't have an outdoor space attached to my school, so we had to cross a busy street to go to a city park. But you still can make do with that, right? I mean, I taught for 10 years there, and we could make that work. There's all sorts of, there's the ideal, I think, that we try to project on training courses, simply because we know that it's not possible to always achieve the ideal, but we want you to have the sort of sense of what you can be working toward and the basic principles, so that you can then make the compromises, like use your judgment to make the compromises you have to make in your own individual environment, but keeping in mind, you're going to keep in mind the principles of like beauty and order. So it's organized, that we've kind of talked about, that it's limited, so that's the other sort of thing, that we really try to keep the environment prepared with just what the children need, just what keys.
They need. Yeah. Right.
And so that means sometimes something new might visit the classroom, but it doesn't have to stay on the shelf all the time. And in the same way, when a material is no longer needed in your classroom because everyone's done with it, then you can free up that shelf space too, as well. So we can be really thoughtful, but we just want to limit our environments, so that children go out.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, they shouldn't have the answer to everything within the classroom. That is not what we want. It is to inspire, and then, yes, of course, to go out. And I just have to touch on that, I know that everybody's prepared environment, whether it's one you're helping parents cultivate at home because you're distance teaching, or if you're in the classroom but you're masked and everything has to be spread apart and sanitized, and I know that a lot of you have just been, carefully thinking through all of this. And the prepared environment is just going to look a little bit differently, but there are still those elements, like you were just saying, Jamie, the limiting, the beauty, the calling to the child, the organization, of your personal touches that can all still be there, even in this bizarre time.
Right.
But,
yep. And to, I think, recognize that, the children aren't used to just sitting in one, Montessori children are not used to just sitting in one
Yeah.
space and working all day long. And so
Right.
depending on how things are going either at school or at home, or how, just having that and keep that in mind and try to think of ways children can have more than one space to work wherever they are. And I know it's hard.
Oh, for sure.
I know it's really hard right now. And I know the limitations, but, being creative, we're seeing such incredible creativity of how people are adapting to
I
this new
know.
reality. So just offering that,
Yeah.
ways to be, creative and allowing children to work in a variety of spaces, but especially at home, don't feel like you just
Yeah.
have a desk and a chair and that's where your child's going to sit all day. Like
Right.
they should
Right.
be on the
Yeah.
rug or out in the yard or any number of things as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I think if you can go outside, try to do a lot of outdoor stuff. We're entering a pretty temperate time. So there should be lots of opportunities to get outside. And that is a lot less stressful in terms of COVID and things like that if we're outside in the fresh air. So yeah, I mean, best of luck with everybody in their prepared environments. And again, don't be afraid to look at it, to critique it after, you might have worked so hard on it all summer. And then now the kids are there and you're like, I really need to move this one piece.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's all okay. You're just going to respond to the needs of the child because, frankly, you didn't know until they got there. And we never do. So.
Yep. Yeah. So have fun with the prepared environment. And yeah, if you have any questions or want to share pictures with us, we'd love to see that and see what people are doing.
We totally would. Yes, we totally would. I saw this picture. I think it was on Instagram. I cannot remember whose it was, but they were using yoga mats as the children's kind of workspaces on where to keep their work as a social distancing thing. I thought that was a really great idea. Low cost, yoga mats aren't that expensive, and a way to kind of keep the children, even though I know it's hard for elementary children to be separated. I just thought that was kind of a neat idea of how each child can, be in their own little space, but in a comfortable, like on the floor, where they want to work.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I mean,
the picture was super cute.
Such tough times right now for everyone, but hopefully you're managing, you're creating it or creating spaces for them or helping their parents create some nice spaces for them to work and keeping in mind the importance of that space for children's development.